And recording has started. Hello,
Hi,
people.
guys.
We are here today. This is Level Up Conversations with Joe, Vanessa, and Air Force Vet Lorraine. Hi, that's me. Can't see me waving, but that's me. Today's topic is, do open relationships work? Who would
Do
like
they?
to
So I
start
shall take the
today?
helm on this one.
Okay.
Okay, so as Lorraine loves is definition. So I looked this up. It is open relationship is an intimate relationship between two people who agree to share a non-monogamous lifestyle. So monogamy actually is Greek. Mono means one, gamos means marriage. So in monogamy, you have only one spouse, one sexual partner, or a romantic relationship at a time. So with an open relationship, it's an understanding that is a completely different dynamic. So the question is, in light of the Will Smith, Jada Pinkett, Chris Rock triad of mess that happened at the Oscars, and that sparked from a long history of them having animosity between themselves, between Chris
Mhm.
Rock and Will Smith, and then the joke he made about Jada Pinkett Smith, um, and the two of them being the target, I would say, of a lot of gossip because of their open relationship.
Okay, so do open relationships work?
I mean, okay, I'll go. I, I say that they do and they don't. It does really depend on two people. I mean, because there's instances where both people want an open relationship and they come to an understanding and it works for them.
Hmm.
Um,
I find that they do work to an extent, and really it depends on age. If you're young, vibrant, free, I think it will work, because it's it's not taken serious. I mean, you're not cheating, because the other person knows, but and it depends on your boundaries. Like, every relationship have boundaries, or every relationship should have boundaries, or else how do you know what to do when? So it can work, but the older, and I know, not exactly from experience, but I know a person who know a person who know a person, um that I think having an open relationship was the demise of their marriage, because
Hmm.
one person lied, and they had a relationship on the side, so they broke the rules of of what the agreement was. And the agreement was that, yeah, sure, we can, have other relations, but not without the other person.
Hmm.
And so when he stepped out, I think that kind of started the things, to fall apart, and now they're divorced. But I mean, as long as you keep within the boundaries, I think it's possible. But for me, it would not be two women. It would be two men. So I'll leave it at that.
I mean, okay, so I don't think that I would entertain the idea of an open relationship. To each their own. But I guess if I had to pick, honestly might be inclined to be like maybe two women. I mean, listen, um, you know, I mean, if I get a day off, I mean, like, you
Right.
go do
And
you, boo. You know what I mean? I get a day off. Somebody else is taking care of you. I'm trying to think about this like from a like for me, but also coming from a traditional perspective. Back in the day, people had like a homestead. It was about a village. A man had like
right.
multiple wives, right? There was children running around. So I guess if I look at it from that perspective, right? Somebody
Hmm.
else is taking care of the kids. Somebody
Right.
else is like
Hmm.
taking care of my man. He's like moving from different households and eating here on Monday and the next place on Tuesday and whatever. And I'm thinking like, well, then I don't have to cook all, you know what I mean? Like, just from that perspective, I can see where it worked, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess I could see it from that. But that being said, I don't think that personally I would, entertain it. But I could see where in the olden days, I mean, that was the model. Like this monogamy version is very much like a modern thing, and it worked perfectly fine for people back in the day, and children grew up and everybody thrived, And there's also cultures where it's a woman and multiple men. So that door does swing both ways. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's whatever works.
Hmm. I know for myself personally, I couldn't do it. That's just too much drama, stress, whatever. For me, it just wouldn't work. And I think it's very interesting that the concept of monogamy itself, um, from what I have seen personally, is a very um, modern, westernized way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so, in the Western perspective, the concept of an open relationship always seems to be centered around it being a sexual relationship. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can have like an emotionally attached one, you can have one
Mm-hmm.
where it's, more than just sex. But I think because it has a reputation of, people thinking of it in sexual terms, and they're thinking, oh, you're just being greedy. You got this person, you got that person, and there's no rules, there's no boundaries. And I actually did a little reading today. There actually are rules that are in place. You can,
Mm-hmm.
Google it and find out some of the rules that people have for doing open relationships right. So, one of them is setting sex boundaries, setting emotional boundaries, because that is a very easy way for a
Mm-hmm.
relationship to become monogamous, if you will, with the other person, if
Mm-hmm.
the third party is not aware of what's going on. And if the other two that are catching feelings for one another are not being honest with the third person, then all of a sudden you've got a, out of whack dynamic. Another
Mm-hmm.
one is establish when it's cool to hook up, who it's cool to hook up with. Figure out how much time you'll spend with the other partners, which is also important because it leads to, a different type of dynamic if you're spending a significant amount of time with one person versus the other. Decide how you talk about your relationships with each other and other people. Discuss how often you'll have a check in. So, all of those things I think are really fascinating because it definitely defines the boundaries and what's acceptable in that type of relationship. Because if you don't, I think it's like any other kind of relationship. If
Right.
you don't have boundaries, if you don't have understanding, if you don't know who you're dealing with, then it's all going to blow up.
Well, Vanessa, it seems like you did a lot of homework
Yeah.
on this topic.
I had
I
to, and I'll tell you why. I did it
okay.
in light of the Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith business because, being sorry about that, being, celebrities who are very open about their relationship and open about their family life. I just feel like Will Smith's actions at the Oscars was unprofessional. It could have been
Mm-hmm.
handled better, could have been handled privately, even though him and Chris Rock have like long-standing beef or whatever. There's definitely a better. It could have been handled better, I think. And
Yeah,
I also
because
think,
what
mhm,
he did had nothing to do with that joke. I think it was just a joke that kind of put him to the top.
mhm,
They've been going through a lot of, ridicule and a lot of jokes about them since they've come clean about their relationships. And that's the thing
right,
about getting older. When you get older, your filters tend to diminish
uh
because it's
huh,
kind of like I'm old, who cares? Like I don't, you know, even if he doesn't do another movie, he'll still be okay in life. He'll
oh
be
yeah,
okay.
definitely. He's got enough
So,
clout. He's put in enough years into the industry. He'll be
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I beg to differ, ladies. I do. I really 100% beg to differ on this, but I did not see anything wrong with what he did. I
Hmm.
felt like, you know what, his life with his wife is his life with his wife, and no matter what kinds of ups and downs they've had or scrutiny or they've been dragged through whatever, or people said that, oh, she's been pushing him over the edge and he felt the need to like step up and be a man, whatever. I'm not in that relationship. I don't know what happens between them behind their closed doors, but when I look objectively at what that man said on a public stage in front of a whole bunch of people, I think that he had every right to defend his wife. Now, I get that people will say, well, yeah, but it should have happened behind closed doors. Well, that joke should have never happened. So, actions, consequences. The fact that he went out of his way to make fun of her in public. And, I've actually done some research on this as well, where, Twitter and people was saying, well, she has an illness. My thing is, there's so many layers to this. Illness or not, we were talking about a Black woman's hair. He did not go for a white woman who had decided to get a haircut. It was very specifically like, there's something there where it's like, why are we joking about her in front of, it's giving very much like a bully in the schoolyard, bullying somebody so everybody else can laugh. You know what I mean? And I put myself in that situation, and I felt like, you know what? He stepped up as a husband, and I respect him. I don't care about anything else that has happened before that day. That man went up there and took a risk, and that was the payoff. And that's just my opinion. I think I don't care.
Right.
I didn't watch the Oscars, but when I saw that clip, at first I didn't think it was real. I was like, come on now. Because the comedians make jokes all the time. And if you really look, Will was laughing. But then when he turned to Jada, she didn't find that joke funny at all. And so Will, I think he had it was a delayed reaction, because it wasn't like something like he heard the joke and then he went up there immediately. And you're right, every reaction does have a consequence, and now Will has to face the consequence of what he did.
And I 100% I agree with you on that. It's like the same way that Chris had consequences to his actions, Will is going to have consequences, whatever that's going to mean for him. But as far as what he did, I respect it. I think he stood up for his wife, and I think it's beautiful, because they're the only two people, maybe along with their kids, that know what goes on behind closed doors with the battle she's fighting. He's the only one who knows when she's had to cry, all that other stuff. So I respect him for it.
I spoke to someone who read Will Smith's book, and in the book, Will described how he always felt like he was a coward because he didn't step up when his mother was being abused. And then that day happened, and it was kind of like, all right, here is my time to step up for a woman, a damsel in distress. And that's what happened. So we speculate that's what happened.
Yeah.
That is something that kind of pushed him over, to show that he had been a coward all this time, but today he wasn't going to play the coward, because definitely he saw his wife was in pain. She's going through something public, something that she wished that can be private, but it's public. And so he did see that it wasn't funny. And I mean, in Chris's defense, not really defense, but he's a comedian, and they joke about a lot of things, and they joke about things that are real, even though it's not like this is the first time he's joked about them. It's not the first time he joked about someone else's illness. I mean, I'm quite sure he joked at people's illnesses at other people's expense. And I find that joking about issues that are real is a way to get laughs.
Yeah.
I mean,
but Will wasn't laughing, and neither was he after he got that beat down. So you know what? Mission accomplished. I think he got exactly what he deserved.
I have the opinion, my guy had the opinion that it was an act of chivalry, like you had said, defending his woman, because she wasn't having it. She rolled her eyes and she, made this face. And so Will felt he had to go up and do something. I felt like Lorraine said, it was definitely a delayed reaction. And then I also kind of felt like, and this may be a very unpopular opinion, but I kind of felt like, all right, well, Will, why do you feel the need to show out to defend a woman who's continuously, very publicly throwing you under the bus? I wouldn't defend a woman like that. If that were me, I'd let it ride.
And
You
that's
know
what a
what?
lot of people are saying. And I don't find that she threw him under the bus. When that
Right.
whole thing came out about their open relationship, people act like that was the first time Will heard about it, and it wasn't. They
It
had an
wasn't.
open relationship.
Yeah.
So she didn't cheat on him. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that August got into his feelings and started spilling the beans.
Right.
So I don't I mean it's very hard. I just think that he could have spoken to Chris after or behind the scenes. I don't think that was the time for it.
Right.
Well, in terms of like the question of why he would speak up for somebody who threw him under the bus, I think that on it shows a lot of growth as a partner to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say just because my partner did something wrong, if that's even the case, I'm just speculating from the outside, but to say just because my partner did something wrong, two wrongs don't make a right, that it's
Mm-hmm.
like because she did abcd in this moment I could defend her, but I'm going to give her a taste of her own medicine. That would be going down to that level and basically being the same as the partner that you feel like did you wrong. So if that was in fact the case, that he stood up for her regardless of that, I respect him that much more. It shows growth, it shows maturity, and it shows that he said, you know what, we can go and deal, me and my wife can go and deal with what she's done wrong or whatever, but in this particular case this person's wrong and I'm going to handle it. So that for that reason I see the sense there. He, to me, probably didn't even think about all of that. It was just a
Yeah, he
wrong
did. I don't
situation
think.
that
Yeah, I don't
needed to
think.
be addressed. So
Yeah,
that's
I
one
don't
One.
think
thing.
he thought that there were going to be any consequences. And you said
Yeah,
something, Joe. Two wrongs don't make a right, but it did because Will felt that he was right
i
because he
I
was
feel like
wrong.
he was right. I
So
mean,
two wrongs do make a
I
right.
mean,
I
here's
don't
the
want people
thing.
to say that two wrongs don't make a right. It does.
I think that's where the argument is. I go back to saying I don't think that he was wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that he was wrong. I really feel like there's something about the fact that he addressed it right there and then. Now, we will never know how many times he's addressed it behind the scenes with this person.
Mhm.
And we know, we've all heard that there's been history there with the same person about talking to them. So if I'm looking at it from his perspective, how many times do we know that he's addressed it behind the scenes, and to the point where he was like, you know what, I done told you this many times and you still went ahead and took it
Mhm.
on the world stage, so I'm going to handle you right there, so maybe you're going to understand what I'm trying to tell you. Because I guarantee, I don't think it would have had that much of an impact if he had handled it behind the scenes after the fact. But I
Mm.
guarantee you, Chris will never forget what happened. So
There's a
sometimes in life, you just have to, consequences, man. It's just consequences.
there's a comedian. Her name is Kathy Griffin, and she made a
Mhm.
comment about how now comedians have to fear that people will jump up on the stage and assault them. And I was like, that's very interesting because, they bring up topics that are sensitive, that are hard to talk about. And it's not that they make light of it, but they have the platform in which to address it in such a way that makes it palatable. And that it would be a shame if this sets a precedence for people to say, well, look, Will Smith did it. I can, jump up on stage and somebody says something I don't like and smack the mess out of them.
Mhm.
Well, look at what happened to her, Kathy Griffin, and I like her as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's really funny, but she got canceled because
Mm-hmm.
of what she did with the situation with Trump, with holding like a head up with that was bloody and a chopped off head, and
Yep.
so people didn't take well to that, and and she got canceled, and thanks to the millennials, because that's how this cancel culture started, the
Yeah.
millennials, because there
You
was
know
no
what?
such thing.
I mean, I definitely, I agree with you, Wemi. That is a really, really good point as far as like comedians. But I'm also kind of looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective, where I feel like we all as human beings in the world, in order for us to function and function well, there is rules and boundaries in place and stuff like that. And I understand that comedians, it's their job, but maybe we need to start rethinking then who gave them the right to like cross boundaries and basically invade people's personal space for comedy. Because then at some point we got to ask ourselves what's funny, you know? And is it, I mean, to me, it's funny if we're all laughing, right? And I know that's subjective, but there's certain things that we can agree, like, okay, that's funny because we get it. It's funny, it doesn't insult anybody, nobody's toes are being stepped on and stuff like that. But I do really think there's certain things that are just not funny or shouldn't
Yeah.
be. You know what
I
I
didn't
mean?
think
And
the
there's
joke was
certain
funny.
topics that are just like out of, out of bounds for certain things. So, and then also there was a point that I read on Twitter where people were talking about he was a part of a movie, I believe, or a show that talked about Black women and hair.
Yes.
Yep.
And
I've never seen it.
we already know that's a whole nother, that's probably going to be a whole nother podcast in itself, right? Because we know about Black women and hair and the trauma and the internal, there's all these kinds of things with that. And he was a part of it. So we would have expected him to have learned and known something, or at least gotten something out of that. So, you know, this whole thing was just a little bit just, it just wasn't funny, really. It just was not funny. It was tasteless. It was a tasteless joke. And especially for a Black woman, because to me, I also felt like, so I mean, even if we put aside her illness, a Black woman cannot shave her hair and go out in public and feel comfortable.
Right.
Well, where does that come from? We're looking at the westernized, modernized standards of female beauty. And why can she not just want to shave her head and just go? Why not?
Yeah. She's got the face for it. I'll tell you that much. She's a beautiful woman.
Yeah. And her daughter. And they looked beautiful, And this family, like her family has really supported her. Her daughter has been one of her biggest supporters. But it's not, to me, it's not even, to me, this is a problem that is a bigger problem than just that. It's the idea that we're talking about a Black woman's hair, but we're also now looking at just women and being objectified, and then it goes back to the whole thing with India Arie, I am not my hair, because it could have been anything, but societal standards and the fact that it gave very much that because you're not conforming to what's beauty and acceptable in society, we are going to make a joke, and all of us on this world platform stage, whatever, we're going to look at you and we're going to laugh, and that's just not okay, because that could have happened to any woman.
Yeah, I didn't think the joke was funny, and it took me a little bit to like connect the dots.
Right.
Because I wouldn't, I would not joke about something like that. I wouldn't consider that to be funny in any realm. So, but being that they were among their peers, in the industry, people got the joke. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, I know last year, that whole thing with what's the actor, and he shot the other production person by accident.
Oh,
Alec
Baldwin.
Right. Did that happen before or after the Oscars? Because
but I know he had something to say about this situation. I know
he could have joked, right? Like I'm saying, he could have joked about something else. Why didn't he joke about that? Like, so I'm just trying to figure out, were they like in the same timing? You know, like, yeah,
it's very much like you're almost like preying on the maybe did you feel like she was the weakest one to kind of like prey on? Was that like a safe bet that turned out to be like the slap heard across the world? You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, like, no.
I think the silver lining out of all of this is the fact that it brought an autoimmune disease to the forefront, because not everybody's really aware of alopecia, female baldness, that it exists, that it's genetic, it's hereditary. I have a girlfriend who had it, and she was able to grow back the patch of hair that was diminished for whatever reason. And there's all kinds of things that play into, stress and all the stuff we do to our hair that can exacerbate a problem that already exists. But I say all that to say that at least something kind of good came out of all of this. And I think it's really interesting how quickly their publicists came out with their apologies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
because they said that Will didn't wrote an apology on one of the social media. I'm like, that wasn't an apology. When you put it out on social media, that's not an apology. I thought he like called him up or something, but he didn't. So,
Mhm.
which I don't find a problem with that, because if he didn't apologize personally, then he wasn't sorry.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
he wasn't
he
sorry.
probably was like, yeah, well, type whatever. Let's just get on with life. I said what I said. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right, right, right.
It's like the slap already happened. Are we going to take it back? No. So mission accomplished. He's like, I don't care what you type on that social media site. I'm moving on with
Mm-hmm.
my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
really don't find that they should take away his Oscar.
No.
One don't have anything to do with the other.
Mhm.
He established those accomplishments.
Yes.
Banned him from the Oscars. So what? They didn't want to be there anyway.
I mean,
so,
I mean,
so it's kind of like, yeah, there's a consequence to telling a joke. I mean,
that's just what
you
it
may get
is.
beat up. I don't know. so,
I mean,
so
hey, in this life, like I said, I live by that. Actions have consequences. And that's something I live by even for myself. So,
Mm.
like, before I do or say anything, I'm going to understand that whatever I do or say is going to have consequences. And you have to take accountability for your actions at the end of the day, you know? Because I think it's very unfair to look at the other person and say, well, no, they shouldn't. Oh, yeah, but hold on. Don't start nothing.
mhm.
There won't be nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
Exactly.
yeah, like you said, consequence, Joe. When I do stuff that I know that's out of character or out of the norm, I do look at the consequence.
You have to.
Especially like before I go into like the HOV or see, now I'm Californianized because I didn't used to call it the HOV. What is it? The
Carpool lane.
carpool lane. Yeah, right.
Mhm.
When before I go into a carpool lane, I'm thinking in my head, how much is in my bank account?
Exactly. I've
3,
done
take
that too.
away 5. Can I afford
Yes.
this ticket? Okay, I can afford the ticket. I'm gonna take my chance and I'm gonna go with
Yes.
it.
Yep.
And and just bringing it back around to do open relationships work. There's a consequence to that.
Yes.
Definitely,
There's a
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
consequence when you go outside the norm. There's gonna be consequences.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I
Yep.
think
Very
very
much so.
interestingly, because I just have to keep harping on Jada only because that's the only open relationship I'm aware of personally. Well, almost
I know
personally,
that.
but but yeah, I just think it's interesting that I wonder how many boundaries were crossed for that August guy to get caught up in his feelings because apparently, he's one that formed the emotional attachment. And I didn't really follow this story until the whole thing broke. So I don't know how well the rules of engagement were between Will and Jada before there was a third person brought into the mix, or I, from what I recall, Will and Jada were on a break of sorts. So it wasn't even like she had stepped outside of the relationship to start a new relationship. Um, it was just weird. So it got all kinds of like entanglements or her situationship, and I really think that. The waters probably got easily muddied because she was probably spending significant time with somebody else. Um, wasn't checking in with Will, um, and whatever else ends up lending itself to that type of misunderstanding ultimately.
Well, and again, going back to consequence, those two said they will never get divorced no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And the
They
no
did say
matter
that.
what means
Yep.
consequence.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it was anything that Jada did in particularly. I just think it was a young man who got caught up in his feelings with an older
Mm-hmm.
woman,
Mm-hmm.
and it happens.
Yeah.
And even though I don't look like it today, it's happened to me where a younger guy had got caught up, and I'm like, whoa, 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 we're only playing here, don't like, we're not going to walk down the aisle or anything. And his feelings got hurt.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until, gosh, how many years ago? Years ago. And then last year, he wound up calling me and say, hey, how you doing? Yeah, he lives in Vegas. He's another veteran, a Marine guy. And he said, yeah, I just wanted to apologize. I did get out of pocket. You did, help me a lot. You helped me get through a bad time because he was married and his marriage was falling apart and all kinds of things were happening. And he's in a new relationship now. And he's actually a father and he's doing quite well. So that was pretty nice for him to give me a call. Because yeah, things did get weird. Because he got caught up in his feelings. And so, again, I mean, I wasn't in a relationship at the time, but in regard to Will and Jada, that it has consequences. When you open up your relationship at any time, it has a consequence. When you invite a third person in, relationships are challenging enough just with the everyday hustle and bustle. And that's why when people speak about Jade and Willa, Jade and Willa. I didn't throw their daughter into it. Jada and Will, they had an agreement that I'm going to work, and when I work, you stay home, and then you work, I stay home. And again, that's how they were able to get their relationship to work in Hollywood, so to speak. And then that's when people had regarded them as like this power couple, not knowing that there was other stuff going on behind the scenes. And of course, who did they blame? The woman.
I mean, I definitely, me personally, I don't really follow too much of this stuff, so I can't really speak on it. And I tend to not really take everything with a grain of salt that I probably read or, whatever, unless I actually hear it from the person themselves, right, like writing it or a video or whatever. But I will say, from the outside looking in, feel like it looks like they have a beautiful thing going. I mean, it seems like they both made that choice that divorce was not an option and that we are going to stay, which is more than we can say for a lot of relationships here, especially here in America with over 50% divorce rate. And we're just talking about one-on-one partnerships. But for them to be able maybe to keep it together, even with like outsiders, if that was the case, and to still hold strong to each other and be like, what, we are each other's person till death do us part. I mean, I have a lot of respect for that. I think it's beautiful. And if they chose to open up their relationship and it was obviously mutual, then again, like I said, I think, what, I really do think, do open relationships work? Yes, they can work if both people choose to make it work. And 100%, I think they can work.
And the whole premise of us being here on this platform is to let other people know that do what works for your relationship. If it works, it works. It's working for them. So they're doing something that, a lot of people have not been able to master.
Right.
So.
Right.
So. Okay. Any other last words on the topic?
I will just say this quick thing. This little research that I did led me to some very interesting definitions for all kinds of types of relationships. I know we touched on polyamory before. There's this new one I've never heard of. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called metamor. And it's people who share the same partner but do not share a direct sexual or emotional relationship with each other. Meaning it's like one person that gets the benefit of having two others without those two others on the outside having that direct contact with each other. Now,
yes, that's what I wanted. That's what I was saying about having the two men, because people have asked me, well, do you want the two men to get together? No, I don't want the two men to get together. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just heterosexual and I want heterosexual relationships. But yeah, no, I want it to be all about me.
Interesting. Right. I've never heard of it. I think I've heard of maybe the concept of it. But if I think about, I've never heard that word, but if I think about the concept of it, it sounds very much like when a man cheats and so his wife is at home and is not aware of the other one, but he's like in the middle getting the benefits. You know what I mean? But it's interesting looking at it from that perspective, because this is very much like agreed upon where it's like, well, you know, I have that other person, and you know,
exactly. And people have done it all the time. I think we're just now putting a word to it.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you know, when you have, like they say, like booty calls or friends with benefits, I don't believe in friends with benefits. It's sex. There's no benefit. I don't understand why people say that, because it's sex. But anyway, but right, when you agree to something like that, when you say I see you when I see you, well, it's already understood that I'm not with you exclusively. So we've been sharing each other the whole time through. We're just now putting a word to it. So.
Right.
Right.
And then that's just kind of like, if you're out in the streets, then how many other households are you frequenting, right? Like it could, I mean, you know, and that goes both ways, to be fair. You know, it's not just when a man cheats, it's also when because I don't want anybody to come for me and say, oh, you always go for them. No, any person in the relationship cheats and has multiple partners, sounds like that's what it is, because the person being cheated on is only dating that one person, but that other person is like with multiple people. So I guess that's the idea there, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, do whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Who are we to say? We don't live there. We don't have to tolerate the, you know, we won't be involved in the backlash, whatever that is.
Exactly.
So,
but go Will.
all right, ladies, we're signing off.